Now that we've brought together our campaign building by understanding our strategy, our avatar, building our funnels, building our audiences and our creatives, the next part is now starting your testing. So this section is all about how I build my testing, how I structure my testing, ready for me to analyze my ads and audiences to find the winners, and then how I take those winners and graduate them. So graduation testing is something I'll be covering off, which is my way of running ad testing to maximize performance. So let's just take a step back and look at this graphic here, which I'm sure you're familiar with right now. This is how the auction works. So the advertiser value, the customer, the consumer, the user experience, and therefore the value that you are scored at in the auction. Now, one of the challenges when you're running testing is if you have a stable campaign, let's say, for example, you're spending whatever it is, $500, $5,000, $50,000 a day, and you've got that across one or many campaigns. And if the performance is going well and you go to introduce a new creative, you want to know that that creative is going to perform, because the worst thing you can do, and it is something I did many, many years ago, is you take a campaign that's performing well and you drop an ad in there that has not been tested. So you don't know whether this ad is any good. And bear in mind, an ad is only as good as it appears for the audience. So if you have, let's say, 5 different ad sets, and you have some ad sets targeting some interests, some ad sets here targeting some lookalikes, etc., there's no guarantee that the one ad that you have is going to work across all audiences. It's just the way that it works. And the same happens to you if, for example, you draw your ad on a piece of paper and walk the street and show it to lots of different people. Even if they're in your target market, even if they're looking to buy your product, they might see your ad and say, yeah, it doesn't really appeal to me. That's kind of how it works on Facebook as well. So what I want to do with my testing is to try and overcome the guesswork and focus on creating ads and audiences through my test process that are going to give me better performance when I go into prospecting and scaling. And the way I do that is to focus on ads that give me insight that they're going to work for this particular audience, and therefore the confidence that when I go and use that ad for my existing campaigns, that I have a higher chance of it working. And really the goal of the testing is that I can win the best auctions. Now let me just define what I mean by the best auctions. The best auctions are the cheapest, and they're the highest converting, and they're the highest value for me. So if you're running e-com, for example, you want low cost traffic, you want high conversion rates on your site, and you want a high average order value. Obviously down the line you want good lifetime value as well. But just talking about the Facebook auction, Facebook know which type of people are have a high likelihood of purchasing, for example. So if you create a website conversion objective and you optimize your ad set for purchase, that's you telling Facebook that no matter what audience I put into this ad set, I want the people that are more likely to commit the purchase event. Doesn't always mean buy. Like, one of the things about this is Facebook can only work on the data you're sending it. So if you're saying I want people that buy, it's based on people hitting that purchase event on many other websites as well. So let's say you have an audience, and for the sake of argument, it's 50 million people. And you say to Facebook, right, from that 50 million people, in my ad set, I want to target everyone that's a purchaser. So you set that to website conversion, you set the event to purchase. What Facebook does is it looks at those 50 million people and says, how many of these people are likely to buy? It could be 500,000. It could just be 500,000 people that Facebook has identified. Now, the problem is you look at that audience and you say, there are 50 million people that can potentially sell to. Facebook says, well, there's only 500,000 that we have identified that are in market and that are likely to buy your product. You don't know this necessarily. And so you might be running ads, scaling, doing really well, and then all of a sudden your performance stops giving you results. You're looking at it and thinking, well, it couldn't be the audience because there's like 50 million people here. I've only generated 10,000 sales. I've hardly tapped into that audience. Maybe even you've done 100,000 sales. But the reality is there's only 500,000 active buyers in that market. What I try to do with winning the auction is to win as many of them as possible. Now, if you're, going back to looking at what goes into the auction itself, if your website and your customer journey is not performing well, therefore your estimated action rates are low, and if your ads and the experience of those ads is poor, then you're not going to get the premium users. So when I talk about winning the best auctions, if I have, for example, 500,000 people that Facebook have identified as being the purchasers, but the quality of my ads, my funnel, my offers, my audiences, everything is poor, I'm not going to get the highest score I can in the auction. Someone else is. And therefore, I'm going to be dealing with slightly lower quality audiences that might be have a lower intensity, lower propensity to convert, or may not actually have as high average order values, for example. Or, there's going to be something about that auction that, because now I'm missing out on the primary auctions, I'm going for the second best auctions, the third best. And I'm winning those because I'm better than other advertisers, but I'm not winning the premium ones because I'm not in a position where everything is lined up. And that's what I try to do with building up the avatar, the testing, the research, is to get my ad account into the position where I can win the best auctions. Now, if you know anything about manual bidding, this part of the algorithm, the advertiser bid, is to do with how your auctions are perceived in the market. Manual bid allows you to override that. With my campaigns, I don't use manual bid that often because I find that when I've given Facebook what it needs, great estimated action rate, great user value, I automatically win the best auctions. And therefore I get more stability because I'm pumping data through the pixel into Facebook, into my ad account of high quality data. And I achieve that through my testing process, which is graduation framework and graduation testing. Now, when I look at the auction itself, there's a few different things that you need to understand about how the auction works and why my testing process works so well. So the first thing is the best auctions identify the user intent. So even if you've got 500,000 people in any given audience that are highly likely to purchase, it doesn't mean that as soon as they see your ad, they're going to buy. Let's say, for example, we take a customer journey of someone who wakes up in the morning, checks Instagram, checks Facebook, then gets themselves ready, eats, goes to work. Then they don't look at the phone, their mobile again. Then maybe at lunchtime they log into Facebook again just to see what their friends are doing. Maybe in the they have a coffee break and they're on Instagram, etc. They're consuming content and they might even see your ad, but they're not buying anything. They're just browsing and getting on with their day. Then let's say, for example, they get home in the evening, they have dinner, they're checking Facebook or Instagram during the day. Then later on in the evening, as they're sitting in front of the TV watching Netflix, they're now browsing again, maybe on their laptop, maybe on the mobile. But now they remember this ad that you showed them earlier on in the morning, and the ad comes up again in the newsfeed, and they're like, all right, I'm going to click it now. They click the ad, and within 10 minutes, they bought your product. Now, you might look at that and say, my analytics shows that in the evening, I get more conversions. So logically, I should not advertise until the evening so I can save a ton of money and I can maximize my return. That's incorrect. As I've just explained, you've potentially missed hitting them earlier in the day and priming them. So the best auctions, and Facebook know this, so when they're delivering your ads, and sometimes you're seeing, this time in the morning is really poor performance, so I'm going to stop advertising and all that kind of stuff. You're actually damaging your chance of winning the auction by over optimizing. So the best auctions, Facebook knows when to deliver your ad to the right user at the right time. And that's a big thing about timing. So when I look at how best to optimize my spend or do bidding or lifetime budget versus daily budget, that all comes down to understanding how the auction works and maximizing value. One of the cool things about using lifetime budgets, where you set a budget and an end date. So for example, you might set a budget of $5,000 and run it for 14 days. That doesn't mean you're going to spend that whole amount straight away. What Facebook is trying to do is to get you the best conversions through that 14-day period. because Facebook's working on what's best for you as an overall. When you use daily budgets, what you're telling Facebook is, I kind of don't care what my performance is as long as I spend my budget. Like, that's the main thing you're telling Facebook, is spend my budget. The secondary thing is you want results. Whereas when you're using a lifetime budget, you're saying, it's actually really important to me that you get me results, and then spend the budget however you see fit. Now, if you just think about that logic, it makes so much sense, right? There are pros and cons of it, and we'll cover that as part of the different parts of the training. But it's so important to understand this about the auction. Then the cost, it's cheaper to reach people that don't click and buy ads than it is to reach people that do click and buy. The conversion path, maybe someone clicks into ads at lunchtime, buys in the afternoon, and also the value as well. So, the cost to target someone who buys at least 5 or 6 times a month, maybe clicks Facebook ads, maybe buys outside of it, the value of that person to you when you're optimizing for purchases is higher because they're more likely to buy from you. Therefore, potentially the cost is higher. So don't be caught into thinking that low CPM, low cost, is the best thing for you. Sometimes a higher CPM can also work out as well. So the final part of this section is then really giving you the overview of how the graduation framework actually works. And it's a real kind of underlying, I guess, architecture or structure of how this whole program is set up. So the BPM method is a methodology of bringing brand and performance marketing together. Then you've got elements like 5W avatar, call for, which we've covered, building your 4 funnel system, creating great ads. And then you get into the stage of testing. So once you've got your ads, you have an idea of your funnel and the audiences, you've built your ad account. The testing phase is like the most central part of what I do, because when I get my testing right, I create stable accounts, I create profitable campaigns, and my scaling is far more predictable. So this section here, it's really important to understand how we're structuring our processes. We're going to talk about data, how to get really good at understanding data, how to build your campaigns and certain things that I look at when I'm building my testing, how to then go about building your testing, your campaigns, and we'll go through the different phases of the graduation framework and how to take advantage of something called discount bidding, and then have you in a position where you can take all of the research you've done, build your test campaigns, run and interpret your results, and know what action to take next. So the next few videos in this training section will gear you up ready for optimization and scaling.